Good afternoon. You're all very welcome here to celebrate the life of Jane Power. My name is Jo McAteer, I'm a civil celebrant, and I'm honoured to have been asked to lead today's celebration of Jane's life. We meet here today to celebrate and honour the life of Jane, to give thanks for her life and the experiences we shared, and to wish her well now that our time together is over. All the faiths of the world speak of another life after death. We may not know what it is, but we can hold on to the hope, the belief or the knowledge of peace, rest, fulfilment, and of people being reunited in love. For Jane, the journey is beginning, but for us there is loss, grief, and pain. I'd now like to share a poem with you called A Life That Matters. Ready or not, someday it will all come to an end. There will be no more sunrises, no minutes, hours, days. All the things you collected, whether treasured or forgotten, will pass to someone else. Your wealth, fame, and temporal power will shrivel to irrelevance. It will not matter what you owned or what you were owed. Your grudges, frustrations, resentments, and jealousies will finally disappear. So too your hopes, ambitions, plans, to-do lists, they'll all expire. The wins and losses that once seemed so important will fade away. It won't matter where you came from or on what side of the tracks you lived. At the end, whether you were beautiful or brilliant, male or female, or even the colour of your skin won't matter. What will matter? How will the value of your days be measured? What will matter is not what you bought, but what you built. Not what you got, but what you gave. What will matter is not your success, but your significance. What will matter is not what you learned, but what you taught. What will matter is every act of integrity, compassion, courage, or sacrifice that enriched, empowered, or encouraged others. What will matter is not your competence, but your character. What will matter is not how many people you knew, but how many will feel a lasting loss when you're gone. What will matter is not your memories, but the memories that live in those who loved you. Living a life that matters doesn't happen by accident. It's not a matter of circumstance, but of choice. Choose to live a life that matters. I'm just going to play a favourite piece of music that Jane loved. And while I'm doing so, I invite you all to call to mind your favourite memories of Jane. I'm often reminded of the Dash poem by Linda Ellis, which begins like this. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that first came the date of birth and spoke the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between the years. We know that all that has life has its beginning and its end, and life exists in the time span between birth and death. And life's significance lies in the experiences and satisfactions we achieve in that lifespan, or within the dash, as the poem suggests. This afternoon I'd like to focus on various aspects and experiences of Jane's life. The death of a parent or close family member, whether sudden or expected, leaves those left behind in a dazed and confused state, where they ponder many things about their lives and how their lives intertwined and affected each other. Over the past few days, I've been able to talk with some of Jane's family, in particular her husband, Eddie, and it was a pleasure and a privilege to get to know Jane through the eyes of those who loved her. And over the few days, I've got to know more, and the lady described to me was no ordinary woman. The lady described to me had enormous capacity for love and support. She was intelligent, compassionate, proud, and an exceptional woman. And Jane lived a life that mattered. She lived a life that mattered to you all here today. In her life, she touched each and every one of you that are here. You wouldn't be here otherwise. In the stories I heard from her family, Jane Powell is simply one of the nicest people you could ever hope to meet. And I will share some of the stories and memories shared with me throughout today's service. Jane excelled at being a wife and a mother, and was exceptionally proud of her son Ronan. She adored her family. Her family were important to her. Jane has been described by all that knew her as a lady. In all the messages from the family, she was described as kind, a gentle soul who always had a smile and a wave, the first to help and a wonderful friend. She put 100% effort into everything she did, and was respected by all that knew her friends and colleagues, and most of all, her wonderful family. Jane was born on the 13th of May 1953 and lived in Banbridge, County Down. She was the firstborn in her family, and after a few years was joined by her sisters Frances and Gail. She had a good and happy childhood and was into all the typical pursuits. Jane always showed strong ability when it came to languages, and so it was no surprise when it came to further her education that she chose to go to Trinity in Dublin to study Latin and French. And it was while she was there in Trinity and through a series of mutual friends that a certain young man came to her attention, and it wasn't long before the two of them were a firm item. This was in the early 70s, and by 1977 they were married, and shortly after Eddie and Jane went to Nigeria and Africa, where they both wanted to teach, and this they did over a 3-year period. This was a huge adventure and experience for the young couple, where they got to combine travel, work and helping others. On returning to Ireland, the couple set up their life in Felbridge, which they made their home. Eddie worked mostly in Castleknock College, whereas Jane set up her career at the Royal Irish Academy. Here she relished and enjoyed her job. She had a huge passion for words and languages, and in this position she was involved in some great research work, some of which was published, and I know we have a copy here on the casket today, and some of which is still a work in progress. While Jane was passionate about her job, it didn't define her. She had many, many interests and pleasures in her life. Her greatest accomplishment was in becoming a mother to her beloved Ronan, and she absolutely cherished being his mum. Over the years, family time was important to Jane, Eddie and Ronan. They spent many a year holidaying in a family farmhouse, usually the last 2 weeks of June, kicking off the holiday season for them down in County Clare. Jane enjoyed the outdoors and loved hill walking and countryside. The Burren National Park was a comfortable stomping ground for her and her family. When she wasn't walking and enjoying the outdoors, Jane would be found sitting with a good book. There were many a genre of books that took her fancy, but she had a particular interest in historical fiction. But it never stopped there. There were so many areas that caught her interests. I'm led to believe that there are mountains of books all over the Power household, and that must be a wonderful sight for any book lover. Jane loved sitting in her conservatory. Here she would water her many houseplants. She could look out on the garden, and this was a tranquil space for her. She could take her book there, or indeed her knitting and crochet. There was always a blanket or a jumper or something on the make. She was a crafter, and she loved making. But above all else, Jane perfected the art of making the most perfect cup of tea. Tea was essential and necessary. It had to be made in a china teapot, and most importantly, served in the perfect china cup, which contributed to the essential taste of every sip. Another family important time was watching movies together. Regularly they would go to the cinema together and indeed watch a movie in the afternoon, followed afterwards by lengthy debate and discussion. It's no wonder that Ronan took his degree in film, to Jane's immense pride. Jane accomplished so much throughout her life. She was especially gifted at any crafting, but as we come close to the Christmas period, we remember the fondness that Jane had for Christmas. She loved the shopping, preparing, and really embraced the whole spirit of Christmas. She loved the Christmas atmosphere and all that it brought into their lives, and despite their protests, Eddie and Ronan were made part of the whole Christmas experience. As you all know, Jane has suffered ill health in the last few years, an illness she bore with great dignity, but unfortunately her health took a big decline over the past months, and sadly Jane passed away in the early hours of Thursday morning. The messages of support and condolence have given her family great comfort at this time. Jane is sadly missed by her husband Eddie, her son Ronan and his partner Niamh, her sisters Frances and Gail, and her extended family, friends and her colleagues. Continue to share your memories of Jane, memories which I hope will give you great comfort in the weeks and months ahead. I'd like to share a short poem called Remember. Remember me when I am gone away, gone far away into the silent land, when you can no more hold me by the hand, nor I half turn to go yet turning stay. Remember me when no more day by day you tell me of our future that you planned. Only remember me, you understand. It will be late to counsel then or pray. Yet if you should forget me for a while, and afterwards remember, do not grieve. For if the darkness and corruption leave a vestige of the thoughts I once had, better by far you should forget and smile than you should remember and be sad. As we leave to bring Jane on her final journey to her resting place in Woodbrook Natural Burial Ground, let us remember Jane, and let's just take a moment to call to mind your favourite memory of her. The family wish to thank all the staff at St. Bridget's Hospice the nursing staff that worked so diligently with Jane, and also the support and compassion they showed to Eddie and Ronan. They would like to thank all the carers, both at home and in the hospice, but also the palliative care team for their help and support. This has been a challenging time for Eddie and Ronan, but they really appreciate each and every act of kindness and compassion shown to them that has made this journey a little kinder for them. So before we leave to go to Woodbrook, we're going to listen to a final piece of music for this part of the service. And this is music that she loved so. concludes this part of the service, and we commence again up in the Brook.
I've no travel, so I'm at home working from Scotland. I'm upstairs in the meeting there today now. For the Great World. A short reflection with you all. When love is blind, ere the heart sleeps, before my mind learns to rot, to forget life for all that's sweet, but sell my soul I cannot. I love saying gods who show to me nature's glory all around, yet to my love I cannot bring the happiness there I found. I long to go to shed my pain, not greed, but by beauty endowed, and yet I wait, wind-swept by hate, for duty that's lust endowed. I would not be a child again, callous, cruel, and a clown, as I approach eternity, regrets are few unatoned. What price life twice once is enough for feasting every favour, to live each day, at first love always, and sleep at last endeavour. Good afternoon, and on behalf of Jane Parr's family, thank you for being here for this committal ceremony. It's very fitting that we're here today, as it was the family's wish, and the preservation of the environment was something that was really important to Jane. Reducing her carbon footprint and her negative impact on the environment was of significance and importance to her. Earlier we celebrated Jane's life in a fitting and meaningful service, which was celebrated through music that Jane loved, through shared memories and reflections. Now we are gathered here in Woodbrook, where you, her family and friends, have brought Jane on the final part of her journey in this life to commit her remains to the earth. Life is full of partings. We have all seen our loved ones and friends off at places of departure. We go with them as far as we are allowed and linger with them as long as possible. But eventually we have to let them go. However, before we do so, we bid them goodbye and wish them a safe journey. As we hold Jane in our hearts and memories from this day forward, we commit ourselves to carrying her with us always. We honour her memory by the following promises: to treat our friends and family members the way that Jane did, with a caring heart and honest interaction, to move through life with a quick wit, generous laugh and a brilliant smile, and the commitment to holding our hearts open to allow others into our lives. I'd now like to invite Jane's colleague, Anthony, to come and say a few words.
I'm very grateful to Eddie for inviting me to say a few words this afternoon, particularly as I am an outsider to Jane's family and very tight-knit social circle. Instead, the way that I have known Jane is from having been her colleague and, I hope, friend over the 26 years we spent together at the Royal Irish Academy. But that enables me to say some things that the inner circle might be unaware of about Jane, given her extreme modesty. The thing is, it's not everyone with whom one could work closely for over a quarter of a century with never a cross word. But I'm not exaggerating when I say that Jane is that person. When I said so to Eddie yesterday, he pointed out how hard it is to think of anyone who is full of positive attributes, but of whom it is genuinely difficult to think of any negative characteristics. And that gentle Jane was that rare individual. And Eddie, I can confirm to you that your loving observation was not biased by your closeness to your beloved, because once I had conveyed the sad news to the Academy yesterday, the rest of the day was full of affectionate email messages from fellow staff members who had known her, all of whom also sent their heartfelt condolences to yourself and to Ronan. As one of these people said, Jane was indeed a lovely colleague, even to those of us who only shared a tea room with her. May she rest in peace. Another woman agreed, saying, Jane was such a lovely person and always so interesting to talk to over a cup of tea. A third said the news was, quote, heartbreaking. Jane was such a lovely lady, I was so fond of her. Always so pleasant to be around, and she had a really wicked sense of humour, and I think we'd all agree with that last bit too. A particularly perceptive colleague called Sarah, who has been at the Academy since Jane's early days there, wrote this. Recalling memories of her through the years, the overwhelming sense is just what a lovely person she was, thoroughly herself, her gentle way, yet with that wonderfully witty undercurrent. Coming into the Academy as a young woman, I can remember being very impressed by Jane, her calm way with the world. I remember well the time of the Omagh bombing, seeing how upset she was, and even then she remained dignified. And even someone who knew her less well, a lady who worked on a different floor from us, recalls, I used to have great chats with Jane in the upstairs tea room, mostly about books we were reading. She always had one under her arm. That's how I will remember her, with the light coming in through the window on her fabulous hair. Well, as you know and has been said, Jane was always concerned for the well-being of the earth and for ecological systems of all kinds. In that context, I remember her saying to me once that she thought the best thing for an individual to aim for was to come into the world, live in it, and then depart, leaving as few traces as possible. And the manner of this burial shows her commitment and Eddie's to that ideal at a purely physical level. But in a wider perspective, Jane surely did far better. Despite being beset by ill health over huge stretches of her life, she was tireless in trying to help other people. There was the stint in Nigeria, the time spent working for Threshold in Dublin, and other involvements that people here will know much more about than I do. So only someone as modest as Jane would think that she could only aim at having an impact that was neutral. She did a lot of positive good. She has left traces, permanent ones, in people's lives at all sorts of levels. Aside from her family and this closest circle, Jane's gentle influence, light as it may mostly have been, was very widely cast. And it will be to the lasting benefit of more people than we, let alone Jane herself, would ever realise. Goodbye, Jane.
Just going to share a very fitting poem in light of where we're all gathered, and it's called The Oak Tree. A mighty wind blew day and night. It stole the oak tree's leaves away, then snapped its boughs and pulled its bark, until the oak was tired and stark. But still the oak tree held its ground, while other trees fell around. The weary wind gave up and spoke. How can you still be standing, oak? The oak tree said, I know that you can break each branch of mine in two, carry each leaf away, shake my limbs and make me sway. But I have roots stretched in the earth, growing stronger since my birth. You'll never touch them, for you see, they are the deepest part of me. Until today, I wasn't sure of just how much I could endure. But now I've found, with thanks to you, I'm stronger than I ever knew. So for Jane's family, miss her as she deserves to be missed. Love her as she deserves to be loved. And treasure your memories of this good lady who devoted her life to you. And for everyone else, it's farewell to a true friend. Don't put off doing something that you want to do because life is short. Share your memories of Jane with her family. Live every day as a blessing and an opportunity to leave nothing behind.
Do you want to lower it? Declan, do you want to lower it then? That's getting.
Over the door, so I turned to the garden of love that so many sweet flowers bore, and I saw it was filled with graves and tombstones where flowers should be, and priests in black gowns were walking their rounds and binding with briars my joys and desires. After sharing all the lovely memories of Jane during the service today, we now send her on her last journey. Be thankful for the life of Jane, for the love she gave, for the friendship she shared with you, for all that she did for you, for the fun and joy she brought into your life, for the great person she was, the wife, the mother, the sister, the aunt, the wonderful friend, the hard worker, the neighbour, the kind and gentle spirit. Jane, the physical and emotional burdens of this world are no more. Rest in peace.
Anybody else like this?
Nice to have that. Nice. Yeah, you too. You too.